baby. Alrighty, so I just had a coffee and a cinnamon bun. It was delicious. And we are now going to figure out the first results from the massive soil experiment that I kicked off 6 weeks ago. So what we're going to be doing today is harvesting the radishes from each of the 3 different soil blends that we've been working off of. Then we're going to weigh them and see how each of them performed in the different blends and make a couple of observations on it. So before we dive into actually harvesting them, I want to quickly recap what it is that we have going on here. So 6 weeks ago, I decided to kick off a huge soil experiment. And the first thing that I did was build 3 raised beds that are each exactly 3 feet by 8 feet in size. And there's only one critical difference between these 3 beds, and that is that they each have a unique soil within them. So the very first bed is just 100% compost, and this is our classic no-dig, no-till bed that we're growing in. The next bed over is my personal favorite blend that I've been using the last 2 years, and that is 75% compost and 25% vermiculite. And then the third bed I worked on setting up with Ashley, the soil scientist. So we did a soil sample and we sent that to the lab and we got the results back, and then Ashley gave me some recommendations on what to do from a soil science perspective in order to get it into its absolute best state. And so if you want to see a much more detailed video on how we went about setting up these beds, you can do so by checking out the link up above here, because we've got a really fun video on that. And once the beds were established, the next thing to do was to get them all planted. So on June 2nd, which happens to be my mom's birthday, I planted the radishes. And we did this by direct sowing. And so I did 3 square feet in each bed and 9 divots per square foot. And I used my spacing tile to make sure that was the exact same in every bed. And then with the divots marked, I placed 3 seeds into each one of those little divots. And the variety of radish that we're growing is French breakfast. And the reason why I put 3 seeds into each of them was to ensure that every single divot that we planted ended up with a radish growing in it. And so what that meant was that after 14 days, I thinned out each of the beds to 1 plant per divot. So what that means is that each of the 3 beds has exactly 27 radishes growing in it right now. And the last piece from a plant care perspective is that the irrigation was the exact same in each of the beds. I have them running off the exact same line, and I placed 1 irrigation spike in the exact same area on each of the beds. So all that to say, every variable should be the exact same, except for the one that we're most interested in, which is of course the soil blend that they've been growing in. And so what we're going to do next is harvest them, and then we're going to weigh them, and then we're going to make a couple of observations on how each of them did in the different beds. But 2 quick pieces that I want to touch on before that is that today is July 19th, which means that it has been 47 days since planting them. And as we can see behind me here, they probably should have been harvested about 7 to 10 days earlier. They've grown really well, really fast, but life happens. I had some other stuff going on the last few days and wasn't able to get to them until now. So all that to say is that I'm fine with that from an experiment perspective, but from an eating perspective, you'd probably want to harvest them a little bit earlier than what you're going to be seeing in this video. And then the second piece before we get into harvesting is that if you have not subscribed to the channel here, I really encourage you to do so, because we put out new videos just like this one where we run all kinds of gardening experiments to take as much of the guesswork out of it as possible, so that you can be tapping into its mental health benefits and just feeling how good gardening is. So let's get to the good stuff here and get to harvesting, and we're going to get started with bed number 1, which is our 100% compost no-till bed.
Alrighty, here we go. I'm a bit nervous. Eesh, look at that. That's a tiny guy. Another big one. Man, these are looking good. Holy moly. Whew, these are looking good. Wow. No till, no messing around. All right, so I'm just gonna clean these up before we weigh them. So I'm gonna get rid of all the green foliage on the top here. And then I'm just gonna pop the bottoms off as well. Little baby. And now I'm just gonna give them a rinse. So we get only the root. It's gotta be official. Nice, look at those. All right, I just zeroed out the bowls, so let's pop them in here. And moment of truth. And 872 grams. Beauties. Alrighty though, let's get on to bed number 2. Alrighty, here we go. Whoa. That's a big one right there. So the foliage on bed number 2 here definitely looked the kind of biggest or most elaborate. We'll see what that translates to in terms of harvest size. Oh, jeepers, these are big. Come on. Holy cannoli, these are big. Alrighty, and same thing, let's get these cleaned up. And let's get these bottoms chopped off. It is such a nice night out. This is what it's all about, folks. And let's give them that drink of water. And let's get them on the scale. Alrighty, just zeroed out the scale and let's see how we do. 1.29 kilograms, 1,290 grams. That was more than I was expecting there. Holy moly. All right, on to our third and final bed before a couple of observations. All righty, here we go. And this is our soil science bed that we got here. These babies are also looking so good. Whew, whew, whew. All right, let's clean them up. And let's snip the bottoms on them. Quick little rinse in the foliage graveyard. And let's get them on the scale. Okay, moment of truth. 962, nice. Another good one. All right, and it's just like, wow from my perspective. And I'm so happy and thrilled with the kind of energy and the amount of effort I've put forward in setting this experiment up and being so diligent in that process so that we can run experiments like this and subsequent ones into the future. And I'm going to chat about that at the very end of the video, but let's go through those observations. And I think that there's like 3 that jump to mind for me. And the first one is simply that, things grew well in each of the different soils. The no-till bed, it ended up at 872 grams. My personal favorite blend of 75% compost and 25% vermiculite ended up at 1,290 grams. And then our soil science bed, it came in at 962 grams. So from my perspective and from my outlook as a gardener, what this tells me is that each of them works really well. And it's much less about this being the right way to garden and there being a wrong way to garden, but rather, folks, there are a lot of different ways that you're going to be able to get amazing produce, bounty, harvest, and yields out of your garden. So don't let anybody tell you that you have to do it this way or that way. Focus on ultimately doing it the way that brings you the most joy, the most happiness, and with the resources that you have available to you in your growing environment. Now, the second observation from my end is that, see this? That doesn't taste great. So these are a little bit too old. I should stop chewing while talking. 1 second. Still tastes pretty good. All right, and so the thing here is that while these ones are a little bit larger, they do not necessarily taste better whatsoever. And I think that there's a little bit of pressure or expectation to try and have this huge bounty and harvest and yield. And what that results in is leaving plants either in the ground or on the vines for a little bit longer than what they should be on there for in order to have the best flavor coming from them. So don't feel any pressure or any obligation to be growing the absolute largest plants possible. In a lot of instances, you're actually better off harvesting a little bit earlier. And from a flavor perspective, if I harvested all of these about 7 to 10 days earlier, they probably would have tasted even better than where they are right now. And then our third and final observation is just that experiments are so fun. This is such a great way to go about gardening because all of that pressure around expectation of bounty or harvest or yield goes out the window. It puts all of our energy on just trying to focus in on the different variables that might be impacting how a plant grows. And by doing them in an experimental manner, we're able to really hone in on specific variables, such as in this instance, the soil. And so my encouragement to you is to run some form of an experiment this season because you're going to get so many amazing learnings from it. And I have a feeling that you'll just absolutely love that shift in energy where there's no longer any expectation on bounty, harvest, and yield, and all of the energy is focused on just learning and becoming a better gardener. And so where do we go from here? What happens next? Well, there's two pieces. The first is that in those 3 beds, I've got other crops already going. We've got some basil going, we've got carrots, we've got potatoes, we've got tomatoes. And so over the course of the coming months, we're gonna have more videos just like this, where we're able to go through them side by side. So if you've enjoyed this video so far, then I encourage you to subscribe to the channel so you can check out all those other experiments, plus all the other ones that I have going on in the garden this season. And the second and kind of final piece is that we now have some empty space in that bed. And so what I'm going to be doing over the coming days here is planting a succession crop of turnips in there. And their kind of grow time is about 60 days, so they should be done by the end of this season. And that means that from that exact same area and space, we're going to be able to see even more results just in this one season. But folks, that's everything for this video here. I hope that this has been helpful. I hope that there might be a learning or two for you. I certainly know that there has been for me in going through this. If you do have any questions, leave those down in the comments. If there's any experiments you'd like to see us run, leave those down in the comments as well. Other than that, I can't wait to catch you in the next video. Go get those hands dirty, and I'll see you soon.